always in a rush to get it wrong. You know, lots of rushing to what we don't know about Russia, what we don't know about the climate. Not so much rushing to what we do know about our economy and these incredible markets. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you. I'm Neil Cavuto. And I'm not saying the media should not cover the climate debate, should not cover the Kremlin and the White House and all that. I am saying, how about covering what is going on in a lot of other issues, like new highs for stocks, higher wages for Americans, and, of course, for housing. Not to mention the Atlanta Federal Reserve putting out a model that shows, they say, the economy growing at a better than 3.5% clip this quarter, the one we are in. By the way, that is well north of the 3% average growth the administration forecasts in a budget that was poo-pooed as unrealistic. To Charles Payne, we've got Kennedy here, Danielle McLaughlin, and Larry Glazer. All right, Charlie Gasparino, Ben Stein, they're off this week. Don't ask, do tell. Charles Payne, what do you make of all this?
Listen, we know media has always been in the business of showing train wrecks and car wrecks, but they're spending way too much time now trying to create these wrecks themselves. And you're right. What's happening, and it's reflected best in the stock market, is really phenomenal stuff. Our economy is starting to move on so many different fronts, and whether it's over 3% GDP this quarter, the jobs growth, particularly in construction and mining, these things are real. We just saw earnings for the first quarter that were phenomenal, nothing short of phenomenal. The stock market reflects that, and I hope most people out there aren't dissuaded about whatever their dreams are, whatever their hopes are, even being invested, because things are going well.
You know what I noticed, though, Kennedy? Many in the media, and I know it always says, oh, there they go, railing against the media. But this is the same media that has ignored this market run-up, but didn't waste a nanosecond to seize on that day a couple of weeks back. We were down almost 400 points as sort of an indictment of the Trump administration, their agenda, et cetera.
Yeah.
So they pick and choose their battles and their facts.
Yeah, and it's a false abstraction. It's very dishonest because, you know, sure, the president is going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. I don't think that's going to have a big measurable difference on the climate. You wouldn't know that by the way the media hysterically covers all of this. That was one of the president's campaign promises. Another promise was to have GDP growth conservatively between 3% and 4%. And if he's seeing that his second quarter in office, that is the kind of result that everyone should be talking about, because that means that people are working, wages are going up, and banks are lending money.
Now, I'm the first to say, too, on that growth estimate out of the Atlanta Fed, Danielle, is we'll absolutely go ahead and question whether that's sustainable. That would be a tough thing to sustain. But given the criticism the president, the White House has endured, Republicans have had to put up with on forecast of that magnitude, would it kill you to point out, well, I guess one quarter we could do it?
I don't think it would kill the mainstream media, and I think, in fact, these are great numbers, particularly unemployment. It's incredible, the lowest since 2001. I will say that this is an inherited economy to some extent because we have seen what happened in the previous 8 years, and we will see, really, I think, the policies kick in and probably around fall when we see some legislation passed, when we see, I think, more of an adjustment to Trump's policy.
What if we don't? What if we don't see that legislation passed?
Well, and in fact, we may not, right? We're having huge roadblocks on healthcare. It's indelibly linked to the taxation reform. I guess we'll see. I don't think it'll be great for the administration, but maybe like climate change, we will see, even if there's not something happening at the top, we will see companies, businesses, large and small, doing what they need to do to keep the economy growing.
You know, Larry Glazer, one of the things I do see in this is that if you had read all the press Friday morning, and including the famous New York Daily News play on the old Gerald Ford thing, but this time expanding it to Donald Trump, the president of the world, dropped dead, well, I'd look around and first of all be reaching for a gas mask because obviously we're going to hell fast. But the fact of the matter was, and the markets were continuing to soar. So what is the disconnect there? And for you, is this just a premature jump ahead of the reality crushing in that we're all going to burn up and die?
I don't think that's the case. Look, Neil, for the majority of Americans, when they wake up in the morning, they're thinking about so many different things. They're probably not thinking about the Russian scandal. They're thinking about the health and welfare of their family. They're thinking about the economy. And, you know, the irony is, since a lot of these scandals and allegations are actually surfaced, that the economy has shrugged everything off. Unemployment's come down, the stock market's gone up, but also consumer confidence has gone up. Optimism in the economy has gone up. Small business optimism has gone up. The people that actually hire and put things to work. So I think at the end of the day, you have to look at that data, and that data has showed that there's a real disconnect and that there has been no measurable impact in the economy itself, and that's very optimistic. That's why you're seeing a raise in the forecast for the gross domestic product from the Atlanta Fed right now.
Yeah, you know, Danielle hit on something interesting, Charles. I want to follow up with you. This market that sort of follows its upward trajectory on its own, what if it doesn't get what it's presumably been jumping up on, or what we thought it was jumping up on, the prospect of tax cuts, regulatory relief, health care reform, whatever. Can it maintain itself? Is this something that we've not missed? Maybe I missed, maybe you didn't, but that it's built on more than just expectations of gifts out of Washington?
It is built on more than expectations. Larry pointed out what they call soft data, these surveys and things. But we have seen, and I'll give you a prime example. In December, the first time in over 10 years, we saw home builders say that foot traffic expanded. The first time in a decade.
Right.
Well, the first quarter home buying went through the roof, led by those under 25. So that so-called soft data has begun to materialize into real hard data. And by the way, investing that I'm watching and what these companies are saying, the guidance they're giving, none of these companies, by the way, are assuming that President Trump's legislation or his economic agenda will be passed. So the guidance we're getting that's driving this market is based on the fact that the wheels of commerce have begun to move again, in part because they know they have a friend in the White House, and at least there won't be any more speed bumps or brick walls.
But to Kennedy, your point earlier, you wouldn't know it, given traditional coverage. I know I'm sounding like the media basher again, but I just feel that the media, ourselves included, have an obligation to report the good, the bad, everything. We have time. It's a 24-hour news network and everything else. And there are lots of them, so we have the time. But I only see it covered one way. So this other stuff that Charles alluded to gets zero coverage. So then is that the prism through which average folks are going to see the world and see this presidency and see this progress?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because it's almost as though the opposition to the president is cheering failure. And I don't understand how you go back home to your constituents and you say that the world is falling apart, therefore
like the climate accord.
me.
We are standing out by not being in. Our own being apart from this team is bad for us.
It's funny because it's really just the perception of being part of a team as opposed to something that is actually lasting and meaningful. But, you know, to Danielle's point, the Republicans in Congress absolutely have to take the lead on tax reform and health care. They have to figure it out. Obviously, you know, those of us who believe in free market solutions would love to see it untethered from government. And when they can do that, that's when you'll talk about sustainability.
I'm just worried, though, given the time horizon and the limited number of days they're at work, whether it can get done.
John Cornyn says next month.
I think I also want to get back to this Russia thing because this is a huge story, and I understand that there is frustration, particularly with those in the Trump camp, that this is being overcovered. But we're going to see what Comey has to say next week. I have no reason to believe that what is in those memos is not being reported, and this is a problem.
It's a very big story. I do believe the president compounds it, though. I think there was a great article in the Friday's Wall Street Journal about this, that he, by tweeting about Russia and all this other stuff, he is just feeding the beast here.
Yes,
it's a legitimate story, and it should be covered. Right. But I think the president, ironically, compounds it by dwelling on it.
Yes, but it's also Kofeive and, you know, what happened in the RNC and the plagiarism. I think that he sometimes can't get it out of his own way.
What do you think of that, Kennedy? That's the problem.
Oh, Melania's speech. You know, that.
No, she's...
No, absolutely, and I think, you know, he tries to blame part of that on his communications team, but this is certainly, you know, maybe you can blame it on an immature presidency, and they're still finding their footing, but they have to find it much, much faster, and I think if you look at the foreign trip, you see that the president is capable of having big successes. Again, when he gets out of his own way, he's still learning how to do it, and it looks as though there's still too much cannibalism within the administration, so that has to calm down, and they have to keep their eye on the ball. I think, you know, when he goes on these attacks on Twitter, it is a great big distraction. They do have to refocus.
And if they're going to quote Twitter, let him have tweets that have to do with the stuff you guys alluded to, and not the stuff he doesn't want.
With the economy, tax reform, and health care.
Yeah.